Hi everybody. This week I first want to talk about some calendar changes. I again sent an email saying this, but when I assigned your paper, which is due soon, when I assigned it I wasn't realizing that the date I assigned it was Good Friday. So on the syllabus it says that the paper is due on March 25th, but the paper will now be due on March 30th. You should still have it in by 11:55 a.m. Also, this coming week, you do not have a discussion post. You just need to read a chapter, find some time to watch the film or movie that you're going to write your paper on, and then again, the paper will be due on the 30th by 11:55 a.m. Also, because of this paper being due now the following week, I've made it so that you don't have to do the discussion post that's listed on Angel, and that's the one that's listed for March 28th to April 1st. So you don't have to do that discussion post that week. You will have a quiz that's due by the Friday, April 1st, and again the paper's due March 30th. This week you're going to be reading about the Reformation, and I think the Reformation is a very interesting time. Martin Luther, who was an Augustinian priest, posted a list of grievances that he had with the church. He was, again, a priest. He was living in Germany. One thing that was happening in Germany at the time was what was called the selling of indulgences. This means that there were priests who were telling their congregation that the people could pay the priest money, and then he would ensure that they have less time to spend in purgatory. Of course, he had no control over that, so they were basically extorting money from the people. And this wasn't every priest. This wasn't a huge amount of priests. But there happened to be one priest in particular that Martin Luther knew personally who really was cashing in on this practice. This is one issue. Martin Luther had a lot of issues with the church. But again, he was a Catholic priest, so he was trying to write down the things that he thought the church should kind of think about and possibly change. So he was really calling for a reform from within the church. His list of grievances, his list of complaints, was posted on a church in Germany. There's kind of two stories about this. One, that he boldly went up and put this on the front door of a church so that the congregants could see it. And the other version is that he sent this to a friend who also later posted it for him, or maybe even without his knowledge. It wouldn't have been common at the time for priests to articulate in writing the things that they thought should change. But one thing that had changed recently was that, shortly before this, maybe 30, 40 years, the printing press had been invented. And this meant that more and more people were being taught how to read, and illiteracy was no longer the big, huge problem that it had been. And so posting that list on the door of the church meant that lay people who weren't priests, could read this, and they had the ability to read and understand what he was saying. And this led to a lot of people who agreed with him kind of protesting against the church and eventually starting their own church that they called the Lutheran Church. Now, Martin Luther, again, did not set out to start a new church, but this is what happened as a result of what he said. And when the Vatican, the Pope, heard about what he had written, the Pope asked him to recant what he said, gave him a certain amount of time to recant, and he refused to do so. And this started what's called the Protestant Reformation, which led to a lot of different reforms in different parts of the world that, again, had people starting new churches. So you're going to read about that Reformation, and in particular how it affected women and the role of women. And so Martin Luther, one thing that he believed is that celibacy should not be demanded of priests. And so he went on and married a nun. And then he talked about more equality in marriage. Not exact equality, not the equality that we'd like to see today, but just women being given more of an important role as a wife and mother. And her role was kind of like the head of a school, like she was supposed to teach about Jesus to the children, and the little family was like a little church. And so anyway, women were given a little bit more elevated role through the Protestant Reformation. So you'll read about that this week. Again, I hope that the changes to the schedule I've made make sense, And basically, you don't have a discussion for the next 2 weeks. You should be working on a paper which involves watching a movie first. The list of movies are in the syllabus, and all the movies can be found at the library at College of St. Mary. And if you do watch them there, please don't keep them long so your classmates have access to them as well. And like I said, the movie Dead Man Walking, I'm pretty sure, is on Netflix. You do have a quiz on April 1st that you'll have to take also. I hope you all have a wonderful Easter and a great celebration with your families, and I will talk to you next week.